Crafty Fam, welcome to my channel. I'm so glad that you could tune in to be with us today. I'm super excited for these next 3 projects. I mean, who doesn't love spring? I absolutely love spring. And you know, I was watching Heidi Sonboul DIY, and she has a new channel out, which I'll link below, and it's all about paper crafting. So it inspired me to do these next 3 projects with, they're all 3 done with Dollar Tree products and scrapbooking paper. So I had just bought about, I paid $200. It's just a little story. I paid $200 for about $1,000 or more worth of scrapbooking supplies from my sister-in-law, and I have been dying to use some of them on anything other than a scrapbook project. So these next 3 projects, I do just that. I'm using some scrapbook paper from my stash to complete some really fun and upbeat springtime projects, and I hope you guys like them. With that being said, if you guys are new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad you're here, and if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button and that little bell to notify you every single time I upload a video. And if you like this video, give me a big thumbs up. That goes for you guys returning as well. You guys already know that I love you and you're fabulous. I just want to know whether or not you liked the video. Leave me some comments, interact with me. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I mean, I don't want to encourage that, but hey, you know, I just like a little feedback now and then. And with that being said, let's get to the projects. Okay, for my Easter garland, you're gonna need 3 of the 6-foot Dollar Tree foam Easter egg garlands. You're gonna need Dollar Tree Jute Twine, 24 wooden beads. I bought mine from Amazon. I'll link those below. They're the 1-inch beads. You're also gonna need 1 to 2 packs of the wooden ornaments, the color your own ornaments you get from Dollar Tree. I used 2 packs, but that's because I alternated between chicks and bunnies. You're also going to need 2 sheets of scrapbook paper of your choice, some spray adhesive or glue of your choice, 3 colors of paints. I used Pool, Ballet Slipper, and Maize from Waverley's chalk paints. I've also used some pom-pom balls that I left over from Christmas, and you'll need a large needle or something to thread the foam eggs and the beads and so on with. You're going to also need like some dowels to string your beads on because you're going to need to paint those. And that's about it. Let's get started. So what I started with was painting my wooden beads, and it makes it easier if you just string the beads onto a dowel and then take one end of the dowel and put it into some floral foam and the other end put it into some floral foam on that side, because then it holds up your dowels and you can paint them whatever color you desire and it holds them in place. So I used 3 dowels, 1 for each color, and I just put my dowels on that. I just painted my wooden beads that way. Once I was done with painting my wooden beads, I set those to the side, and then I started working on my ornament. Now, what you're going to want to do is take your scrapbook paper and turn them over. Pick out your 8 ornaments. And on the back of your scrapbook paper, you're going to want to trace around each of your ornaments. And you're going to want to do that 8 times for whichever ornaments that you're using. And that way you'll have 1 piece of paper per ornament. And when I go to cut it out, you'll notice that I always cut it a little bit larger than the trace line. And the reason for that is because I prefer the method of sanding my edges off, because it gives me a clean edge and it makes it look like I can get into those little crevices and those little places that you can't cut exactly, because I'm not really good at cutting it out exactly like it's supposed to be. And I'll always cut a little too close to the line and then it doesn't fit exactly right. Then you set your papers aside and you take your spray adhesive. Now, I love spray adhesive because I find it works with all kinds of different applications. My favorite is the Elmer's brand. I didn't have the Elmer's brand. I was out, so I used this Loctite, which isn't my favorite, but hey, what are you going to do? You use what you have, right? So you just set your ornaments out, and then when you get the hang of using spray adhesive, you spray it on, and then you really saturate your project, and then you want to wait about 30-45 seconds. That way it gives the adhesive time from being wet to going to tacky. And tacky is what you want. Wet is not what you want. If you put your paper on wet, it can stain your paper. It can show through because your paper will soak up all the adhesive, and that's not what you want. You want it to be tacky. So just wait a few seconds, then place your paper down onto your ornaments. Once your paper is down on all your ornaments, and then you just take your sandpaper and you just go around all the edges of your ornaments and you just sand away from your project. You want to sand away and down from your project. You never want to sand up and toward your project or back. You don't want to do the back and forth method up and down, because that can lift the paper from your project and rip it, and it just will ruin your project. You don't want to do that. So just remember, sand away and down. And if it comes up in an edge, don't worry about that. Just use some glue stick or a little bit more spray adhesive and to tack that down in the corner. Now, make sure you take scissors or a tool or something to push through that hole in the top of the ornament, because you're going to want to string the little jute string that comes with the ornament. You're going to want to put that through that hole so that you can tie it on to your garland later on. Now, gathering your supplies, you want to first take the Dollar Tree garland and you want to unstring it, saving the eggs and the small jewels. And then you want to also save your ribbon too. I always save extra things that I'm not using when I take apart a project. That way, you never know, you might need it in another project. And so once you've gathered all your supplies, your jute, your beads, your eggs, your pom-poms, then you're going to want to take that large needle, and I would have preferred like the large plastic needle that you get for yarn working and things, but I don't have one of those. What I had was this large metal needle. And you want to take your jute, take the end of it, tie a little loop in the end of it, and then take it to your mantle or wherever you're hanging it up at and measure it out. And then I just snip it at the other end, leaving the other end a little longer than I need to. That way I can tie a loop in that end when I'm done. Then I go back and I put a piece of Scotch tape on the end of your twine. And the reason why you want to do that on the end of your jute is because jute will unravel. And when you're trying to put it through the eye of the needle, it is going to be very difficult because it will keep unraveling. So make sure that you put some tape or something on the end of that jute so that it makes it easier to feed your needle. And once you've got the needle onto your jute, then you want to start by taking an egg. I used 3 colors. I used pink, blue, and yellow. And those are the colors I'm going through for my spring decor. So then I just took one of the eggs and I started with an egg. And because these eggs already have a hole in them from being strung onto the ribbon, then I just started with that. However, my needle is not long enough to go through the egg entirely. So I had to use some scissors and a dowel to push my needle all the way through. Once I get it out the other end, then I just go ahead and pull it through. And then after I've gotten my egg on, I placed a pom-pom and then a jewel bead, and then I took 3 wooden beads, one of each color, and I strung them on, and then I took another jewel and then another pom-pom and then another egg, and I just repeated that pattern until I had all of my eggs and my jewels and my pom-poms and my wooden beads strung on. Once that was done, then I took the other end of the jute and I just went ahead and tied another loop in the end. Remember I said to leave it a little longer than you needed to. That way I can just tie another loop and it makes it easy to hang up on my mantle. Now, I don't place the ornaments on until I hang the garland. Now, the garland looks beautiful without the ornaments. I just preferred to have the ornaments on there. And so I hung my garland up on the mantle, and then I started on one side and I just alternated bunny chick, until I got to the end of my garland. Now you'll notice that I put 4 on one side of the middle egg and 4 to the other side of the middle egg, and there should be another ornament in the middle that would just hang there. However, I purposely left that without an ornament for the sole reason that I wanted to be able to hang it up and drape it up to where it hangs in the middle of my mantle as well. You can see by the greenery that's in the background here how I have it draped from one side to the middle and then from the middle to the other side, and that's what I wanted the option when I was putting this up. And I am not doing it yet, but I may want to do that when I continue to place more things on my mantle for spring. And there you have it. There's my beautiful spring Easter garland. My second project is my scrapbook egg sign. Now, I love this project. It turned out so cute, and I loved working with the scrapbook paper on these 3 projects. It was so much fun to use my paper for something other than actually scrapbooking. So you're going to want to have one of the Dollar Tree wooden snow globe Christmas signs. Now, if you don't have any of these left in your stash, no worries. Go to the Dollar Tree and get one of their egg signs. You can easily make this with one of their large wooden eggs as well. So you just take that sign, and then you're going to want to have spray adhesive. You're going to also want several sheets of scrapbook paper. That I'm using the 12 by 12 sheets. And you're going to want some Dollar Tree pop dots. And you're going to start by removing the hanging ribbon that comes from the sign, and all signs from the Dollar Tree will have this. And then you don't want that hole at the top. At least I didn't, because I wasn't going to hang my sign. If you're going to hang it, then by all means go ahead and leave that hole there. But for now, remove the ribbon, and then if you're not going to rehang it, then fill in that hole with some kind of wood filler or spackle. I used some Dollar Tree chalking, and that's how I filled in my hole. It's what I had. So once that's done, then you're going to take the scrapbook paper that you've chosen for the large egg shape, and you're going to want to flip it over, and you're just going to trace out that shape, whatever shape you want on the back. Now, I had to turn my paper kind of catty corner in order to fit the entire egg onto it, but that was okay. I was okay with that because it made more of a diamond effect. And once you've got it traced out onto the back of your paper, then you're going to take scissors. Now, anybody that knows me and I'm working with any kind of decoupage or gluing paper onto a project, I always cut a little above the trace. I just use the tracing line as a guide, but I cut a little bit above that tracing line. The reason why is I'm not the best at cutting out projects. I always seem to cut it a little too close, and then it doesn't always fit exactly how I wanted it to fit. But with this, I can go ahead and glue on my paper and then use the sanding method to get that perfect fit. So once that's done and you've put your spray adhesive on, then you've replaced your paper back down on your egg. And you'll notice I'm using the backs of the sign because I didn't want to have to remove all that glitter and stuff. Plus it gives me a double-sided sign if I ever want to turn it over. So then you place your paper down, and then you use the sanding method to get that perfect edge. You always want to remember that when you're using this method, you're sanding down and away from your project. You never want to sand up and towards your project because you can pull your paper up from your project, rip it. It just is bad. You don't want to do that. You want to sand down and away. And I know it's tempting to go up and down, back and forth with your sanding paper because it seems like it'll be quicker when you're sanding. However, when you're sanding this edge off with a paper, you don't want to do that because, like I said, then you're going back up and towards your project and you can lift the paper and rip it. Now, for the bottom of my sign, I chose some grass background scrapbook paper that I had in my stash. All of these papers, I'm not sure where they were bought. I bought a stash of scrapbook stuff from my sister-in-law at a really good price, and these were in there. I will try to find something similar and list them below, but I'm sure Hobby Lobby or any of the craft stores or even Amazon, you can find similar papers like this if you want to do the project exactly like this. Now, I think it would be cute. You could use all kinds of different papers and do a shabby chic egg, and it would be just as adorable. So once you've done this, you want to take your scrapbook paper and you want to cut it in half and then lay the halves on top of each other. So you want to lay your grass paper down face up and then put the second half down on top of it face up. And then you want some cardstock and you want to cut the cardstock to the same width as your two halves. And then you want to lay your scrapbook paper down on top of the cardstock and take some Scotch tape and tape either end of your paper long ways. And the reason why, you just want to make sure that you're taping those three papers together because you don't want them to move and slip while you're cutting, because you're going to do something really cool here and you're going to like the effect. Then you want to flip it over. Once your papers are taped together, you just want to flip it over and you want to draw some V shapes or like the shapes of grass blades onto the back where the cardstock is, and not the front because you don't want any pencils marks to show up on your finished project. So turn it over, do it on the back, and then take some scissors and just snip out those V's. And then when you flip it over, it's going to look like grass blades. So like I said, it's going to be a really cool effect. Now, if you don't want to go through this tedious, time-consuming step to cut these grass blades out, and you have like zigzag scissors or some cool lacy edged scissors, I have all of those scissors. It just wasn't the effect that I was going for, but I think that would be a really cool effect, and you could use those instead of cutting out these grass blades by hand, and you could still get a really cool effect with that. If you want to just leave your paper straight, you can do that as well. It's all up to you and the preference that you're going for. So once that is done, and you've got all your grass blades or your edge cut out, then you want to take one end of those papers and snip the edge where the tape is, or just snip through the tape so that it releases those papers, and you can fold the top papers back. So you can fold the grass scrapbook papers back to the side and then take a glue stick and just glue your cardstock really well. So you just want to take your glue stick and really get lots of glue onto that cardstock. And the reason why we did it this way is because we want those blades to be exactly the same. The edge, however you cut it, you want it to look exactly the same on all three of these papers. Then you take your first grass paper that you have there, scrapbook paper, and you press it down onto the cardstock until it's glued really well together. That gives you a stiffness to one of your grass papers. So one is going to be thick and stiff and the other is just going to be a paper. Now, if you have cardstock that looks like grass or something like that, you can skip this step. But for me, I had to do this because I had thin scrapbooking paper and they weren't stiff. So once that's done, then you're going to take and snip the other tape off the other side, and the top scrapbooking paper that doesn't have the cardstock attached to it, you're going to spray the bottom of your sign with the spray adhesive, wait a few seconds, and then press that down, situate it however you want it, and press that down to the sign. And once that is done, then you're going to want to take the edges of that and, go ahead and sand it off or cut it, trim it, however you want to do it to get it exactly fit to your sign. So once you've done that and you've got all of your scrapbook paper adhered to your sign, you're going to want to print off some medium-sized egg, or you can just take you guys know what the shape of an egg is. If you can freehand it, you can go ahead and do that onto some white cardstock. And I went ahead and I printed out 4 of these egg shapes. I only need 2, but I printed out 4 of the medium-sized egg shapes from the Graphic Fairy onto some white cardstock. Now, then you're going to want to take 2 more scrapbook papers, the 12 by 12s. You're going to pick whatever colors you want. I had pink and blue, I believe it is. And then you want to flip those over and you want to cut out your egg shapes off your cardstock, and then you want to place them down on the back of your scrapbooking paper, and you want to trace 2 pink eggs out and 2 blue eggs out, and then cut those out to the exact same size as your cardstock paper. And then you're going to do the exact same thing that you did with the grass effect. You're going to want to take your scrapbooking paper and glue one of those eggs to the top of one of your cardstock eggs, so that you have one blue cardstock egg and one paper egg, blue egg. And then you're going to do the same for the pink. One pink cardstock egg and one scrapbook paper pink egg. And then I went in and I found a bunny that I liked, and I went ahead and I printed that off, and I sized it to where it was like, I think, a 3 by 5 by 7, and I printed off 2 of those onto one cardstock paper, so that when I cut it in half, I have 2 bunnies. You're going to take your bunny and you're going to cut it out and try to get them exact. I cut them down individually and then I put them on top of each other, and I tried to get them, because you want to get them as close as you possibly can to being exactly cut out, because you're going to stack them on top of each other, and in the end it's going to be really cool. It's going to give your sign a really cool 3D effect. So once you're done cutting all those out and you've got all of your eggs cut out and your eggs glued together and all of that stuff, then you're going to want to take some Dollar Tree. This is a cool part. To distress this, I took some Dollar Tree eyeshadow, and I just took the applicator and I just went around all the edges of my bunny, all the edges of the eggs on all 4 of the eggs, both bunnies, the big egg on the big sign, all the way around the edges of the sign, the grass cardstock that you have laid over to the side. You want to do that for that as well, because that's going to go on top of the grass that you have glued to your sign. And you're going to want to make sure that that cardstock is cut out to the same exact shape as the bottom of your sign as well. So you might want to trace that onto the back and make sure that where it has those V's on the end, those are cut out exactly the same. And then you just go and distress however you want to distress it. I used the eyeshadow. You can use a lot of different things. I've seen people use a pencil to do it. You can use a little bit of black paint, however you want to do it, and just distress it so that it gives that kind of a dimension to your all of your eggs and your bunny and your sign. So once all that's done, then you're going to take your scrapbook paper eggs, not the ones that are attached to the cardstock, but just the scrapbook paper eggs, and you're going to glue them down with a glue stick on to your sign. Now, if you see here how I just did glue them a little to the edge, almost as if when you place an egg in the grass, it's just a little slightly off. It's not straight up and down. That's because it's more visually appealing to your eye. And once you've done that, then you're going to also glue one of your bunnies down to the side of your eggs. Once you've got your bunnies and your eggs glued down, then you're going to take, and here's where your pop dots come in, and it's really cool. You're going to take your first egg, whichever egg you want on the bottom, and you're going to place that. You're going to put one pop dot per corner of your egg and maybe one in the middle, and just place that down. Now I'm using the strips here, but it's the same effect because it's double-sided and it gives that puffy effect. So you can use pop dots or you can use this strip. They sell all of these at the Dollar Tree. This is just what I had. And then you're going to place your first egg down exactly in the same position as you glued the egg on, like if you're going to put the pink egg on the pink egg and blue on the blue and the bunny on the bunny, so forth. But when you get to the second egg, now here it comes a little tricky. You're going to want to take where the egg meets the sign, you're going to want to stack 2 pop dots on top of each other, and you're going to put 1 pop dot on the other egg. That way, like the egg is sitting on top of the other egg, but yet it fills in the gap that it's going to leave between the sign and the egg, because every time you overlap, that layer is going to be a little bit higher than the layer before. So you want to make sure that you're using your pop dots to fill in that gap. And you're going to do the same thing with the bunny, because your bunny's going to overlap that second egg a little bit. So you're going to go ahead and use 3 pop dots where the bunny meets the sign and 1 pop dot where it overlaps the other egg. That way it's attached to the egg on one side and still attached to the sign on the other side, and it's not like funky looking. It looks cohesive, but you get the effect of one egg sitting on top of the other egg and the bunny sitting in front of the eggs. Then you're going to take your grass, and it's been cut and it's been distressed just like the rest of the sign, and you're going to take your pop dots and you're going to layer 4 on top of each other. That way, when you put your grass down, it's going to stand out slightly above the bunny and the eggs. And that's the effect you want. You want it to not smash those bunny and those eggs down. You want it to just stand slightly in front of it. And then you just go ahead and press that down. You don't need any glue or anything. The pop dots do the trick. They hold everything in place. And then I was looking at it and I thought it needed just a little something more. And I had this welcome spring little plaque for scrapbooking, and I thought it was just the perfect touch. And you can put anything here that you want. You can make your own welcome spring sign. This is just what I had, and it made it simple for me. And then I just pressed it on there, and voila, there's my sign. I told you it was going to be a cool effect. So now I have this cool 3D scrapbooking Easter sign, and I love it. Okay, for my third project, I have these fun little birdhouse cottages that I made when I was working with all this scrapbooking paper. I was getting all these ideas, and I've had these birdhouses since Christmas. So I haven't seen them lately at the Dollar Tree, but I'm sure if you go to Hobby Lobby or someplace like that, if you don't have these in your stash, I'm sure you could pick some up somewhere. They shouldn't be that expensive. So you're going to want 2 birdhouses. Mine are Dollar Tree birdhouses. 2 of the small Dollar Tree dowels that they sell all year round. You're going to want your choice of scrapbooking paper of various textures and sizes. You're going to want some cardstock. You're going to want one Dollar Tree bird from the Fairy Garden series. They sell them in little packs. Mine came with, I think, like a couple of little signs. Or no, it came with a bird and 2 frogs, or a frog and a turtle. And then you're going to want a couple of the little choice of fairy signs, or this is just to embellish your birdhouses with, so you could skip this step if you wanted to. I just collect the little fairy series for my grandkids, so I have these on hand. And then you're going to want some hot glue, some E6000. I used some nails, but I'm going to give you a little tip before you start this project at the end of this video. So that's entirely up to you. The nails can be optional. Some white paint. I used Waverley's paint in the color plaster. Some spray adhesive. And to start, I took the cardstock, and because it's difficult to make these shapes and I didn't want to mess up any of my scrapbook paper, I took the cardstock and I made me some templates. Now, not all of the Dollar Tree birdhouses are created equal, so I just did the best I could, and then I kind of finagled it the rest of the way because they're close, but they're not close enough to where the template will match each of the houses exactly. So what I did was I made a template by measuring, just putting the paper on there and tracing it out, and then cutting it out and trimming it down to size. That way I could go ahead and put it on the back of my scrapbook paper and trace out the shapes. Then I wouldn't be messing up my scrapbook paper to make any templates. So that's what I suggest you do. And then you can just keep your templates in case you ever want to make another birdhouse or make them for anybody else. So that's what you needed the cardstock for. Once you get your cardstock shapes cut out, then like I said, you just flip your scrapbook paper over and you trace it onto the back, and then you cut out your shapes. Once all my pieces were cut out for both houses, then I went ahead, and this was a little bit tricky because it has that bird perch, and I needed to cut a hole for that bird perch, but I needed to measure it out. So I took a marker and I just colored the tip of the perch, and then I took what was going to be the front of the house, that paper, and I pressed it down. I kind of like put it on top of there to where if it was flat, I would have been able to just place it on there, and I pressed it down. And then when I took it off, it left a perfect mark on the back of that paper where I needed to cut a small hole. And then I just took some scissors and my Cricut tool, and I punched a hole in there until I got it big enough to where I could just push the paper down over that perch. And once I did that for both of my houses, I took the Waverly's chalk paint in plaster, and I just went ahead around all of the edges, the bottom edge and the perch where the bird sits, as well as the eaves of the house or the trim of the house, and painted all of that white. And once it was dry, then I took my spray adhesive and I went back to attaching my paper to all the sides of the houses. Now I used coordinating paper in pink and green for one house, pink for the other, and then this polka dot paper I used for both of the houses for the sides. And I just take my spray adhesive, which is really simple to use, and you spray it on whatever side you're using it, and then you wait for about 30 to 45 seconds for it to go from being wet to tacky, because you don't want to put your paper down when it's wet or it may stain your paper, and you don't want that. And so then you go ahead and you place your paper down and give it a few seconds to set up and really grab a hold of that paper. Once that was done, then looking at the houses, they looked a little unfinished. So I went through my scrapbooking stuff and I found this trim that you're supposed to trim out a photo with or just use as embellishment onto your scrapbook papers. And I got coordinating. I used green on the pink house and pink on the green house. That way it would coordinate both of the cottages together, but they would have a more dynamic effect. And so I cut them down to the size of the sides and I folded them in half, which was a little bit tedious, but I needed them to go around the edges. And then I took a glue stick and I just glued them onto the edges of the house so the house would look finished and you wouldn't be able to see the seam where the papers meet. And I had these corner brackets that are supposed to use to on scrapbooking where you just hold down a picture or embellishments. And I thought these would be perfect. They fit perfectly into the eaves of the houses. And so I just decided to glue those on, and I did that with the glue stick, just like I did the edges. And then I took my X-Acto knife again, and I just went through the hole, the entrance hole, and just cut that out so that it just looks like it's painted onto the cottage. Then I took my spray adhesive once again, and I just, to the side, I sprayed it directly onto the paper this time. I just gave it a light little spray. You don't want to saturate your paper because it will stain through. You can use glue sticks, hot glue, however you want to attach your roof to your paper to your roof. And that's just what I used, was the spray adhesive. And then for one of the houses, I used a rub-on from the Dollar Tree. I just thought it was cute, and I wanted to embellish the front of this house a little bit more. Number one, because I only had one bird, and I knew that I was only going to be able to put a bird on one of the houses. So the other one, I just wanted to embellish it a little bit more. So I just took this little envelope, this little letter rub-on, and I just rubbed it onto the front of the house. It was really simple, really easy. And then I went ahead, and at first I glued the bird onto the perch with hot glue, but then later I went back and I took it off, and I used E6000 to glue on the bird and the little water spigot to the side of my first house. And then I used E6000 to glue the little clock onto the second house. Now, for the stands, this got a little bit tricky. Now, had I used my brain, I would have just gotten a little drill and drilled a hole to fit my dowel in, and then E6000'd it into the hole. But instead, what I wound up doing was taking a nail and pushing the head of the nail, it's just a small headed nail, up into the bottom of the birdhouse. E6000'd it in there, let it dry overnight, took another nail and pre-nailed a little hole into the dowel big enough for that nail to go into, and then put some E6000 on that and push the dowel up onto the nail. Like I said, it was a lot more hassle than it was worth. The tip I'll give you is, if you drill a small hole for the dowel to go into in the bottom of your house before you even start your project, then you can just go ahead and E6000 the dowel into the house. Now, you don't have to do this step at all. If you're going to just set your birdhouses onto a tiered tray or a ledge or your mantle, you won't need to do this step at all. I was putting mine into a floral arrangement. That's why I wanted the dowels to use as stands. And there you have it. There's my beautiful little birdhouse cottages, and they're perfect for spring, and I love them to death. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed those projects as much as I enjoyed bringing them to you. And like I said before, if you're new here and you haven't hit that subscribe button, do so now, as well as that little bell to notify you every single time I upload a video. And if you are returning, I absolutely love you. Thank you for all the support that you give me. If you liked what you saw, give me a big thumbs up. It really helps me out on this YouTube channel to know that you guys like what you're seeing, as well as it tells YouTube you like what you're seeing. And if you guys haven't already followed me on my other social media pages, the links are below. Head on over to Instagram and Facebook. Follow me there, interact with me there, send me some pictures, especially if you do something that similar to mine that was kind of my idea. If I inspired you to do something, I would love to see how it turns out for you. And with that being said, guys, I will see you next time.